One of the things I noticed was the Patriots had to get into maybe a little bit of a better rhythm on the offense. I'm talking in the passing game when they didn't have those short throws they could rely on. They ended up being stuck with a lot of third and longs and kind of forcing the ball downfield. There were a lot of overthrown passes because Brady had to overthrow it to avoid getting picked. And so I think one of the things that's going to help them out is if they can establish the running game as well. Yeah. And you talked a little bit today, you wrote a story about how the running backs need to find a little bit of a rhythm. Just kind of, what are your thoughts on what the Patriots have done with their running backs so far?
Yeah, well, I think it's just a tough question, and I don't really know the answer because there aren't many teams ever really that have attempted to use 4 guys. Like generally 3 is the most you're going to use in the backfield, and the Saints have done that for years, going back to like days when they had like Pierre Thomas and Sproles, and then I think that Ingram was a rookie in those days. So there's teams that have done 3, but 4, it's just a lot of guys to be shuffling in and out. And I know you want to take advantage of the matchups, and you want to give the defense different looks by throwing in a guy like Dion Lewis here, Rex Burkhead here, and then going back to Gillislee. But I just wonder, my question really is how important the element of rhythm is for a running back. And once you kind of get in a groove, like we saw Gillislee get in the second quarter, Gillislee on a 4-carry stretch in the second quarter had 31 of his 45 yards on those 4 carries. So they were kind of in a groove at that point, and then they kind of got away from Gillislee, and then they went to Lewis, I believe, on the ensuing possession, and then they sprinkled in a little Burkhead. So I wonder if, as the season goes on, if they're going to tighten that up and they're going to say, listen, we're going to go with, James White's always going to have his role. I think Gillislee, Burkhead, Lewis. I just think there's one guy who might not be a factor on game day from that group, and it could vary from game to game. But it's an interesting dilemma that the coaching staff has, and it's one that they really didn't have in the past. Like last year, Lewis didn't really start playing until week 12, week 11. So it was basically all LeGarrette Blount and James White. And then once Lewis did start playing, there were certain games where Lewis was the predominant back. Against Denver, he had 95 yards rushing. Against the Texans, he scored 3 TDs. So that was more Lewis, less Blount. There weren't games where all 3 were kind of interchangeable. So it's just, it's a good problem to have. They have talent in the backfield. I just wonder how they're going to sort that out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if, Gillislee had 3 touchdowns last week, all on the goal line. It'd be interesting to see if he just kind of sticks with that goal line role. Yeah. Have James White work some of the middle of the field, because he did a pretty good job running the other day.
Yeah.
And then, how do you factor Burkhead in? How do you factor Lewis in? It's really, it's a big question. One last